I want to talk about maternal mental health because what is it exactly? And I'm specifically going to talk about postpartum mental health. And that is the time from giving birth to maybe up to 1 year, maybe more, maybe less. And this is a time when moms might be having strong feelings of sadness, anxiety, worry, and being tired. In honor of Maternal Mental Health Week and Mother's Day, I wanted to share a few personal stories about how I struggle with my mental health. And hopefully it'll help you, moms, recognize what that might look like for you. First, the baby blues. The fact is that 70 to 80% of all new mothers will be hit within 4 to 5 days with the baby blues. In my experience, I struggled with this while laying down with my baby and my husband, and we both shared this feeling of feeling blue. And the way that we coped with it, or the way that I coped with it, is understanding that it was temporary. If you look at the definition, it should only be temporary and it will pass. Number 2, intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts, in my experience, I felt that my family was better off without me. And the fact is that I truly felt this was a reaction of fluctuating hormones, because there is no way that would have been a thought that I would have had before having a baby. So the way that I coped was talking it out with my partner and having a reality check, because these intrusive thoughts do occur, but the reality is that they're really not yours, and it's a byproduct of fluctuating hormones. Number 3, mom rage. Mom rage, I didn't recognize was something that I struggled with until I read about it and heard about others struggling with it. In my situation, I saw myself outside of my body and saw myself doing this demonic head shake, and I had no control over my body, like in a horror movie. Like I was seeing myself going enraged. But the good thing is that I didn't act on it. So my reality check was the fact that I knew this was hormones. And the way that I coped was cognitively. So I was able to think through the fact that this wasn't real and this was happening because of my hormones. And it was only in my head, and that it will pass. Number 4, panic attacks. Before having a baby, I was a runner and I loved cardio exercise. However, I realized that after I had my baby, my heart would be elevated so much when I did cardio that my body would be triggered into a panic attack. The fact is that our bodies can be triggered into a fight, flight, or freeze reaction. And in my case, my threshold to react had gotten lower. And this brought back memories of me being in labor, of me not being able to catch my breath before another contraction. So one of the ways that I coped was I engaged in less intense exercise so that my heart rate wouldn't get too elevated and I wouldn't trigger a panic attack. And I also tried to do yoga. However, I also had some pelvic issues, which limited some of my yoga positions, but I also sought help for that. Number 5 is feeling down and unmotivated with life outside my baby. And the fact is that our hormones, our estrogen and progesterone, which are our happy hormones, do get lower or are suppressed after having a baby, especially if we're breastfeeding. Because when we're breastfeeding, the suppression of those hormones allows for other hormones to come through so that we can lactate and bond with our baby. So in my experience, I saw it as an evolutionary adaptation of, I see why this is happening. This is for me to only focus on my baby and not focus on anything outside of my baby. The way that I coped was I did join support groups. So I had a social support that we all had similar experiences, if not that, other things. I did go out for walks, which was really good to feel the sun, the air, the movement, and also establish routines. One thing that I noticed, however, from having this focus on my baby is that it did trigger anxiety within me. And it felt more like a habit, a habit that was reinforced within that 1 year where I was breastfeeding, where I had to constantly think about when my baby needed me or when my baby needed to be fed. And with that habit across that 1 year, I had a hard time letting go of my baby, to let somebody else take care of my baby, to have my husband support me while I was struggling with my baby as my baby was crying. So those are just a few stories that I share from my personal experience, and I recognize there are so many personal stories out there, and I encourage you to share those stories. And one thing to note is that the duration and the intensity of those feelings really matters. So even if you feel like, oh, this is just happening now, pay attention to how long it's taking for it to go away, and also on the intensity. Is it really causing you distress? I sought help. I saw a pelvic floor therapist. I saw individual therapists. I went to support groups. I continue to struggle with some of these things. I think some of it lingers. And I now do different strategies in my daily life that I've adapted. I do sensory strategies, aromatherapy, I do supplements, I do different routines to help with my breathing, because those are all things that still linger 6 years past giving birth.